For the next part of this exercise, open up the Trifold Mailer template. Now this will bring it up in InDesign, and notice that it has two different pages already set up for you. Each of these pages shows all of the different panels, and by default you may not be able to see the image very well, or at least be able to read the text that's to it. In order to clearly see the text, you can go up to View, down to Display Performance, and change it to High Quality Display. This will render everything in high quality so that you can actually read it. The second thing to note on this page is that not only do you have two pages, if you go to your Layers panel, there's two different layers. The first layer is simply the document template by itself, and you can turn that off. They want you to put your design on the second layer, the Use This layer. Notice it's unlocked, and that's what we'll be working on for this one. At any time, if you need to turn off the template, simply go to your Layers panel and turn off visibility for that first layer. Now let's bring in each of our images for our front panel. This first page is going to be the inside of your catalog, and the second page is going to be the outside. This outside is where the front of your catalog, the back of the catalog, and also the inside first panel is going to be seen. That inside panel is known as panel 3, and this is what's going to tuck under once it's folded all together. The first issue that I have is that these panels are turned sideways relative to how I'm going to see it, and it's difficult to design something when it's turned sideways this way. So I'm going to go to my Pages panel, and I'm going to right-click or control-click on panel 2, and I'm going to go to my page attributes and rotate the page spread 90 degrees clockwise. With this done, notice that it's going to simply rotate the view of page 2, and now I can see panel 1 the way I would if it was actually printed and holding in my hands. Let's bring in each of the images of our kids. To do this, we'll go down to our bottom, go up to File, down to Place, and let's find that kids image that we were working with. There's our kids. Here's our kids cover TIFF. Remember, you need to have the TIFF selected because those are the ones that have the alpha channels that we created. To see the alpha channels before you import it, show the import options at the very bottom and say Open. And from here, this is where you can choose which alpha channel you want to have selected. In our case, we're going to start with Kid 1 so we can see him and say OK. Then simply click and drag. And by default, it's going to load the entire image, so you just may need to recrop the frame so that he fits inside of there. Let's repeat this process for each of the other 5 kids. Now that you've got all 6 of the kids loaded into here, make sure they're all relatively the same size, although later on you can go and readjust this, and that they're all stacked close to where you can place them in here. Now let's start building out the first panel. The design of it's going to be left up to you, although there are some suggestions I want to give to you. First off, make sure that you keep everything inside of this first area and note the margins that are here. You don't want to have any important information or text cropping off too close to this margin. Notice that the fold line will indicate the edge of this front panel, so nothing should go past this fold line onto your back panel. To get some colors, I'm going to choose my color theme picker, and I suggest using some colors from the images that you already have. This could be any one of the kids and the clothing that they're wearing. In this case, if I chose her, with one click, I get an idea of the colors that are pulled from this one. This needs to be appealing to children or grades 1st through 6th grade, so I would maybe recommend something that's a little bit more colorful or bright rather than dark or muted colors. If you don't like those, you can simply choose a different person and pick colors from there. In this case, I like this muted for the first one. I'm going to add those to my swatches. Finally, somewhere in the front panel, it needs to, of course, include the logo for Kids Funds. It also needs to include the text, raising the funds, and then it needs to say which catalog that you're building out. For this example, I'm going to be doing the Donuts catalog, so it needs to say Donuts catalog somewhere on your design. All right, with this done, notice that I've got the logo, I've used the images, I've got my tagline, and also I've got the type of catalog that I've used as well. Feel free to add to this as much as you want. Also, you don't have to use every image of all the kids. I do recommend using at least 3, if not all of them, for your design. Finally, remember you've got some other images that I've given you that can be used anywhere within this entire campaign. Those can be added to the background or as part of the overall design for your front image. Now let's focus on the third panel, which will be the next panel that they see when they open up the catalog. Just like we've done with the other, I need to rotate this so that I can see it the way it would naturally be presented. So on page 2, right-click or control-click, go down to the bottom, choose your page attributes, and let's rotate the spread, in this case 90 degrees counterclockwise. And let's do it one more time. I should have done it 180. Page attributes, rotate, let's do counterclockwise one more time. This will put panel 3 down at the very bottom so that we can see it naturally. The text for panel 3 is going to come from the text file that I give to you. Notice that it's a simple single paragraph. It has a heading, so it's all about giving, and then the paragraph is going to tell you about what it's selling and what Kids Funds is all about. However, notice in this paragraph that it's got an insertion point for the organization's name. This means that the catalog that we're going to do is going to change based on the organization that the kid is raising for. So this is going to be variable text. Keep that in mind when we start to design what we're working through. I'm simply going to select all of my text, copy it, let's get a text box and paste it in here for now. Later on we'll deal with the styling and the sizing of everything. Now, in order to place this inside of here, I need to have some sort of background design. I want to choose a picture that gives me an open space that I can easily place this into, but also fits with my overall brand. If I look at some of the images that I've given to you for the stock ones, I want to find an image that could be appropriate, and any one of these could easily be edited and moved around, though some are a little bit better than others. I like something like this because it already has a background that's colorful and the image is nice and convincing. There was another one, this one, which works out really, really well. It's got a good sense of style, plus her image also tends to match the image of the kids on the front. So I'm going to use this one inside of my design as my background. As I've done before, make sure to stay inside of the entire panel area, and I'm going to make her larger and cropped to fit inside of this panel, while still giving me a little bit of room off to the side. So that will work out really well right there. Next, let's design the rest of this panel. I'm going to place the heading inside of its own text box by copying and pasting it, make it larger, and of course you can change up the font to match the style of fonts that you use on the front of your design as well. And the rest of this can be simply a body copy underneath it. To add a little bit more interest and also to make everything fit, I'm going to do some text wrapping around her arm. To do this, it's quite simple. All you need to do is to choose your pen tool and draw off a line roughly in the shape of where her elbow is going to be. We're going to set the fill and stroke color to be none. And then we simply need to turn on text wrapping for that shape. Now the text will wrap nicely around it. Finally, make sure everything fits inside of the area and nothing is going over the edge of your margins. And there we have it. The last part of this outside catalog is going to be the back panel, and this is where the mailing portion is going to be. Now we need to set up not only the address for our Kids Fund, but also the return address, but also the variable text for the addresses that are going to be sent out. Now the first thing we can do is simply add the return address up at the very top. You can get this address, again, in the catalog text. We're simply going to copy it, jump back into InDesign, let's grab a text box, and place our text inside of here. We'll move this guy out of the way. To make things a little bit easier to see, I'm going to go up to my layers and turn off visibility for my template. Now the design of this, don't skimp on it, still needs to look very nice and readable. So I'm going to go and choose some of the same fonts to make sure that it fits nicely and is consistent with my overall design. This can have color, although the address portion needs to be solid white. So if you design this, make sure that you keep everything for the address side, or the design of it on the address side, but nothing on the return address area. Now to add the addresses to the back of your catalog, we need to do this as variable text. Notice that I'm also giving you the Kids Fun catalog of addresses as a spreadsheet. In the spreadsheet, it's got a list of organizations, the names, and the addresses that we want to place inside of our catalog. Jumping back into here, let's first mock up the look and feel of your address. So I'm going to create a text box, and inside of this text box, I'm simply going to type out the name, address, city, state, and zip. There it is right here. Now for these, I need to format the look and feel of each of this text. So I'm going to use some of the same things, but I do want to make sure it's nice and readable. I can change up the size of it, the font, but don't make it so big that it fills up the entire area. Keep in mind, we're going to be adding on information as it works through. So maybe I want the name to be nice and bold, but I'm going to set the address to be slightly smaller and not bold. Now before we can add any of the variable text, there's one thing we need to do to our spreadsheet file. This is saved as a regular Excel file, but I need to save it as a comma separated value file. So I'm going to go up to File and do Save As, and the file format needs to be a comma separated value, CSV. This is the file format that InDesign will recognize. When we hit Save, now we can jump back into InDesign. Let's go up to Window, down to Utilities, and choose Data Merge. This is going to open up a new panel, and from here, the first thing we need to do is go to the Options and select our data source. And let's find that new comma separated value file. With this selected, when we say Open, notice now that I've got all of the information set to here. Now I need to go through and replace our text with what we've got on here. So I'm going to choose my Type tool, highlight the name, and simply drag on or click on first name. Notice that it replaces it with first name. Also, I need to add the last name. So I'm going to double click last name, and that will be added to there as well. Notice that when we do this, it's going to fill up the entire area. So you may need to adjust the size of your text box so that everything fits nicely. And again, there may be more words or more letters than is necessary for the actual name than the dummy name that you've used. So we'll make it a little bit smaller. Again, highlight the address. We're going to double click on address, highlight city, state, and then finally zip. Of course, this doesn't need to have a comma next to it as well. So there's zip. This will now recognize that text. Hey, while we're here, let's also go back to our paragraph of text. Let's highlight Insert Organizational Name and simply choose Organizational Name. Now it'll pick up that information once it's saved as well. With this done, you can go back through and redesign whatever you want for the front part or the outside of your catalog. In the next video, we'll talk about how to design the inside of the catalog for each of your projects. Excuse me, each of your products. The last thing I'm going to do is go to my pages. Let's reset the view, page view, rotation. Let's rotate this back counterclockwise or clockwise.